Thank you very much, Ryan, and it's great to be with you here today. It is indeed a fascinating topic to think about what Africa's urban transition means for both the continent, but most importantly, its people over the coming years and coming decades, and where what sometimes seem challenges to us actually may emerge as opportunities if we are fully cognizant of the fact that there are a number of developmental issues that the continent needs to deal with, but understanding exactly how those issues intersect and transact with technologies for citizen and people benefit is ultimately the proposition of smart cities. And I think that, the audience would be well attuned to the fact that this urban transition is rooted in a population transition in Africa fundamentally. And it's really critical to understand that. There has been a very large push in Asia over the past few decades and century for a population explosion, really, that has seen so many more people added to those societies. And really what is happening in the future is a similar, although perhaps not as significant in scale, but proportionally similar growth in Africa's population. And that is really the key to where the opportunity lies in this kind of demographic shift and demographic change that ultimately speaks to a fundamental change in the way that people live, the communities in which they live, and indeed their cities. And it really does remind me of something that I find quite powerful from the development economist Sir Paul Collier, who speaks about the fact that most of the cities that Africans will live in by the year 2100 have yet to be built. We have a number of cities that are on the continent already, a range of emerging and growing cities, and indeed quite a few potential candidates for megacity status, which is really about population numbers and the tipping point over 20 million people. But the transition in income for those cities is absolutely critical in thinking about the socioeconomic conditions under which a smart city proposition starts to make sense and starts to be more realistic. And that really is illustrated, I think, quite powerfully in this graph, which is at a scale that tries to demonstrate where, in terms of percentage of urban population and income numbers, Africa sits. And that's represented in these red dots that, as you can see, are slowly making their way up the graph from low income to lower middle income to upper middle income status. And that's a trend that is, in developmental terms, obviously there have been recent setbacks with the pandemic and other developmental outcomes, but the point is that there is a positive trajectory. And that positive trajectory really allows one to confront, yes, the possibilities of urbanization, but also, as Harvard economist Ed Glaser would call them, the demons of densification. But the social goods that the population growth portends and urbanization are undeniable. According to the OECD, there is a definite increase in per capita GDP for urbanizing African cities over time. There is an increase in skill sets that are located in urban areas. There are better educational outcomes, as well as better access to financial services and the goods around them. So there really are the social conditions that can enable a different and positive urban transition. But that urban transition, and I think speaking to your topic today, is really about where can we locate the promise of the city. And for me, when I look at Africa's potential, I really am focusing on what are the emerging secondary cities, those new cities that are being built, but also where existing cities are adapting themselves to the realities of really accelerating population growth. And that is of a piece with, the fact that more people in the world live in cities now than in rural areas for the first time in history. But the confrontation I think we need to have is thinking about what is the infrastructure change that fully enables a smart city. And I often think that the language that's better to use is to talk about a smarter city, especially in the context of Africa and in the developing world as a whole, where you really are talking about hybrid cities, cities that have a mix of the formal and the informal, that have, in some cases, some level of sunk infrastructure, but often not. And what are the dynamic systems that emerge in managing those complexities in a coherent way, in a way that embraces the dynamism that is inherently part of that potential, and that actually involves multiple partners. It involves partners in government, it involves partners in the private sector, but it also involves, most critically, designing and building around what are those citizen or individual population needs. And I think that that's where we can really start to wrestle with what these emerging technology themes and trends are in African cities. And these are, as I say, things that have been either launched individually by governments, that have been bought by private sector solutions, partnering with government or partnering with private developments, or indeed just the behavior of citizens themselves. People don't wait to receive passively a service that may be offered to them. The potential of the technology that is available to every person now, whether with a smartphone or digital enablement of a payment system or a social media platform, has absolutely transformed the expectation of how one receives services. And so while there are a couple of bespoke smart city services or initiatives in Africa as deliberate government investments, I think that the field is actually much broader than that. And the field is really looking at where do the technology requirements that enable a transformational change come from. And we've identified 8 of these as critical for really unleashing the potential of a smarter city in the context of Africa. Artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, blockchain, virtual reality, 3D printing, drones, robotics, and augmented reality. Not only because many of these technologies are currently present, but actually their application through very complex ecosystems of actors, of individuals, of citizens, is already taking place to some degree in certain parts of the continent, and some with greater efficacy than others, but really understanding what the potential of that is absolutely critical. And I think that there is a great distinction that needs to be made in thinking about how do you potentially leapfrog a certain infrastructure level provision to understand how you can gain from technology that citizens are using already, or some level of investment. But in order to do that in a way that actually maximizes the potential, it's best to think about how you move towards a fully digitally transformed city away from just optimization focused cities. And the distinction is important, especially in the context of the hybrid city that I spoke about. But it's important in the sense that for 2 decades, even three, the smart city proposition was very vendor heavy, not necessarily one that was appropriate for the level of funding that African cities themselves have, or even private developers or associated industries in Africa. And those outcomes and that narrative often still speaks to an optimization focus. How can you improve a current process that you're offering? How can you make what it is you are doing slightly to a little bit better? There really needs to be a refocus about what does a citizen-centric service look like? What is the outcome that you are trying to achieve? And then work back from that outcome to understand how technology or digital enablement fully allows or realizes that potential. Because then you are actually designing with the end user in mind and not just looking to make an existing system or legacy system more efficient. And that design principle allows then for interconnections through technology, through data, across multiple platforms, across multiple vendors to actually transform the citizen experience. So you're not only reliant on one monolithic investor or system trying to control all of the myriad intricacies of a city, but actually are encouraging a dynamic platform of interaction, and one where there is a free flow of technology and data that actually supports really the dynamism and the frenzy of the hybrid city and the formal and informal reality of Africa's current urban position, as well as its future urban position. And that leads to a few outcomes. It leads to technology enabling a better and safer place for living in community. Thinking about technologies of human settlements and community services and amenities and safety and security, drawing from, for example, the possibility of 3D printing and new structural materials. The idea of understanding what does creating a digital twin mean for revolutionizing how you understand the built environment in a way that can truncate decades of former investment in master plans and city plans and the like. Understanding what that means for supporting the economy of the future, the transaction that's enabled by an Internet of Things platform, being able to link in economic services that citizens access, as well as provide a level of insight with drone technology that for many years was unavailable, both in terms of efficiency and scale, for those people trying to map the complex and ever-changing economic and built topography of a hybrid city. Introducing new and better ways to light, move, flush, and clean cities, especially linking to the just transition that African cities are trying to experience, understanding exactly what does that mean from a sustainability perspective, and how do you link in those technology questions to really unlock the city as a platform. And we like to think of cities as small C propositions, not big C propositions. Big C propositions for a city is one approach. It's one standardized setting for how all of these things are managed, and that can lead to unreasonable timescales, as well as really a bogged down, slow, lumbering approach to technology implementation and citizen engagement. And that really is not the pace at which technology works. It's not what citizens expect from a smarter city. And so thinking about small C cities as a place, embrace that multiplicity of the ecosystem, and actually allow for an approach across the full spectrum of city delivery and all of its delivery partners, public, private, civic, social, that actually uses technology as the bedrock for their new level of engagement. And to my mind, this is absolutely the perfect positioning for Africa thinking about its urban transition, and the fact that the new urban transition in Africa, as I said at the beginning, is still waiting to occur and is occurring over the next 80 years. And we have an opportunity to shape it in a way that, to this point, has not been done from a technology perspective anywhere in the world. So thank you very much, Ryan. It was great to be here.